The following content may contain elements that are not suitable for some audiences. Viewer discretion is advised.
Let me tell you about the time I was kidnapped. My name's Heather, I'm 40, and I grew up in Oklahoma City.
Tell us a little bit about the first time you ever used drugs.
The first drug I ever did was weed. It was Halloween, and everybody's like, try weed. It's cool, make you feel good. So I smoked it, and I seen the tires like going back and forth, like the rims, and I thought that looked pretty cool. So I started smoking weed.
How old were you then?
I was 17.
17 years old. And so you were basically at a party and some friends convinced you that we'll have some more fun if we smoke a little weed.
Yes. And first it started on just weekends. And then I started living with the guy when I was 18. And then I started smoking it every other, just on weekends. And then it started every day.
How did you move in with this guy when you were 18? How did that come about?
I moved out of my mom's house. I was almost 18. I kind of ran away from my mom's house and I went and lived with him. My mom said it was okay if I continued going to school. I continued going to school, and then I dropped out when I was in almost a senior. And that was because of bringing drugs to school. I brought a joint to school and was going on a field trip, and the guy went and rode it, and we was going to wait till after school. He went to the bathroom and smoked without me, and I got mad. I told the teacher I smelled weed coming from the bathroom. So she went and caught him smoking the joint in the bathroom, and I got in trouble, a lot of trouble for it. So I just stopped going to school.
And you were a senior in high school when that happened?
I was almost a senior.
Okay. So then how did it progress from smoking marijuana?
I was a goody two-shoe when I met the guy I was going out with. I didn't know I knew about weed and stuff, but I didn't know that pills got you high. I didn't know cough syrup got you high that you got from the doctor's office. I didn't know any kind of drugs, And one day we were sitting in his truck, and I got my cough syrup out and took a little drink of it. So I was coughing. He said, "Let me see that," and he chugged it. I'm like, "Dude, I need that. That's my cough syrup." And he said, "This gets you high." I was like, "Really? How does cough syrup get you high?" And he chugged the bottle, and he's like, "Here, take another drink." And I took another drink, and me and him sat there and drank the whole bottle of cough syrup. And I was like, "Wow, I feel good, And then he had some Klonopins, and he's like, "Take a couple of these. These will get you high." I'm like, "How are pills going to get you high?" And he gave me a couple pills, and then that's where that started at. I felt really good taking them. And I started he broke my hand on purpose to go get some pills for him.
Tell us a little bit about that.
He told me we lived out in the country, and he told me to put my hand on the side of the house, and he was going to hit it with this hammer thing he had. And I did, and I screamed. He hit my hand with the hammer. And then we had our own house, but we was visiting his parents, and I screamed so loud. He's like, "Just waiting to be at home." And he said, "Okay, I'll count on 3, okay?" I put my hand on the table. He said, 1, 2, and he hit my hand and broke my hand just so I could go to the hospital and give him pills.
How old were you at that time?
Then I was about 21.
21. So you let him break your hand so you guys could go get some more pills. How many pills did you end up getting when you went to the hospital?
They gave me about 20 pills the first time, and then the second time, he said, "Call back, tell me you need some more." So I called back, told him I need some more. And then they had to put a cast on my hand. So I only got probably 40 pills out of all of it.
Wow. So you broke your hand and had to have a cast on your arm, and you got 40 pills out of it.
Mm.
Was it worth it?
No, it was not worth it. No, I have a scar on my hand to this day.
So if you could go back to that day when you were deciding on whether or not you should have your hand broken to get some pills, would you do it again?
No, I wouldn't. No, that was the stupidest thing ever. I look back on it now, I'm like, what was I thinking,
What would you tell somebody, maybe a young girl who's in a similar situation, who hasn't maybe gone that far yet, but is on her road to doing something like having someone break their hand so they can go get some pills?
Right now, you might not, you might be in love with the guy and someone would do anything for him. But later down the road, you're going to realize, when you're sober, you're going to realize that, what was you thinking? Well, there's so much more ahead of you that you just got to take that road, take the right road, and don't listen to that dude. He don't love you. If he's gonna have you lay your hand down, or do anything to get drugs, then he don't love you. Really, he don't. You don't know what's ahead of you, and there's a bright future ahead of you. You just got to take the right road.
So after you had the incident with your hand being broken and getting some pills, tell us how it continued to progress.
He would beat me. I had to go to the doctor because I had so much anxiety that he was taking my anxiety medicine, and he would hurt me all the time just so he could get pain medicine. And then my anxiety pills, he would take my anxiety pills for me. And his dad would tell them, like, if I had to go to the hospital, because I had a scar right here on my nose where he broke my nose and it gushed open, like, on top. And his dad took me to the hospital, but then told his son I had pain pills, and his son took, like, almost all my pills. And took my anxiety pills. He would beat me just so I'd have to go to the hospital so he can take my pills for me.
Wow. What made you come to rehab?
My mom said she's going, and I've been wanting to get help. And where I live at now, I live in the middle of the city. I live downtown. That's a bad area where I live. They're putting fentanyl in dope, and I was afraid that I was going to just one day do too much, and I was going to die.
Were you still taking pills then?
Sometimes I would. If I could find the pills, like not fentanyl pills, I didn't do fentanyl, but Xanax. If I found Xanax, I would do a Xanax. And then I'll be lost in La La Land for like days and not even remember, like I wouldn't even remember days sometimes. It would go by like so quick.
Were you ever doing any other drugs besides the prescription pills?
I done like Lortabs. They weren't prescribed to me. The Xanax weren't prescribed to me. So if I could find Xanax, Klonopins, those were my favorite ones.
And tell us how the prescription pill addiction led to you becoming homeless.
When you're homeless, you find people that you normally wouldn't talk to out there, and they can find anything for you. They, like the little bit of money that you do have, you'd be going and spending it on a drug to where you couldn't get up in life. And they didn't want you to get up in life. They wanted you to be down. And they see you get up in life, they will, keep pushing you down, and they would take your money, say, buy this. And like when they see you happy, they take your happiness away to where you would buy their drug so you feel better.
Illustrate that a little more about how being in the streets is sort of the crab in the bucket syndrome, and how if you want to do something like change your life or do something different, if you're being happy for whatever reason, how that gets taken from you. And explain what happens on the streets.
On the streets, it's scary out there. You're running for your life. You're running from guys that are trying to get you to go with them. There are a lot of girls that go with guys for drugs. I wasn't one of them girls. I would go to parties and stuff, but I wouldn't get in cars with guys that I didn't know. I did once, got kidnapped, was getting off the highway, and that's when I jumped out the car, and I took off running, and a guy from Hell's Angels walked in the store and gave me my things and said, I've seen it all. And from that day on, I didn't get in a car with strangers. I did one other time, and that guy's eyes were big, and he was so high, and he took me where I needed to go. But that whenever I seen the guy's eyes, it reminded me of everything, that could happen to me again. I seen girls do things for like drugs and for money that normal girls, like girls that I'm not gonna say snooty, but the girls that had homes and the girls that were really too shit like I was, they'd be like, oh my gosh, look at them girls right there, and I'm like, I used to be you, and I chose a road, and I hope you don't choose it.
Talk a little bit to the girls who are the goody two-shoes girls who come from good families, who have no business being caught up in something like this. Explain how that happens, or how it can be a slippery slope for these girls that all of a sudden they can end up in a similar situation as you that they never thought they would be in.
You can be with a guy like I was, that you love, and they tell you, oh, try this kind of drug, and you love them so much, and you want to stay with the guy that you do it. And then you know, it turns into more and more and more. And then you find yourself in a situation where you don't know what to do, but keep doing the drug for that guy. And then he breaks up with you and you have no one but yourself. And then you go out, you're addicted to that drug, and you're going out and you're on the streets and you're talking to people that you usually wouldn't talk to. And then you're not that good at shooting no more. You're just a girl, the normal girl. And like I used to be good at shooting. Now I'm an addict. I just now decide to be sober, but I'm always be an addict because once you get addicted to a drug, one bad thing can happen and your mind will automatically think, let's go do that drug to feel happy. So I'm always going to be an addict. I just have to make the best choice not to go do it.
Tell me a little bit about the time that you were kidnapped. How did that happen? How did you get yourself into a situation where that was a possibility?
I was stuck at a store and I was scared to go down a street that led to the house I was staying in with my boyfriend. And he didn't want me to like walk with guys home. Well, this one guy was parked at the store and he went to the other store next to where he was at the first time. So I went over there and I said, sir, do you think you can give me a ride home? It's just down the street. He said, yeah, I can give you a ride home. Well, he went behind the store and started going the wrong way. And I said, sir, you're going the wrong way. He said, no, I'm going. I said, can you please turn around and take me back to the store? And he wouldn't. He turned around real quick and he said, will you have sex with me? And I said, no. He said, I'll give you $20. I said, no. He got all the way up to $200 and I said, no. And he got on the highway. I had a cell phone and he was looking straight ahead. And he said, you go in my house, you go sleep. I said, no, I'm not going to your house. I could not go sleep. I want to go home. And he kept going, and I got on the phone with my grandma. I called my grandma, and my grandma said, Heather, get off the phone with me and call the cops. So I called the cops. I'm on the phone with the cops, and I was telling them where I was at. I remember saying I'm by the fairgrounds. We was getting off Meridian, and I remember there was a Hollywood, like lingerie store across the street. There was a store, and a car was in front of us, and we had to stop. I said, this is my chance. I opened that door. He said, don't do it. I jumped out, and I remember there was a creek bed, and I don't know how I did it, but I had all these bags with me. I jumped over the creek bed, took off, and I was dropping things out of my bag. I was running, and the Hell Angels guy, big old dude, walked in there, and he said, here, you drop these. He said, I've seen it all. And I called the cops. The cops said, there ain't nothing we can really do. I mean, they said we can go look for the dude, but there ain't nothing, he's gone.
Wow.
And that was scary. I mean, that was my life right there,
How old were you when that happened?
I was 33.
And you had never done something like that before?
No, I didn't like taking rides from people. Before I started doing drugs, I was fearless. I would walk everywhere. After I lived in the streets for a minute and I started being around people and seeing how the streets was, then I opened my eyes up and I was scared to walk down the street by myself at night.
So tell us how you went from being a goody two-shoes to living on the streets. How does that transition happen? How do you go from being this good girl to all of a sudden becoming homeless? How does that happen?
For us, it started with me and David. He introduced me to all the drugs, and then I went from there. I started living with my mom. I didn't want to live with my mom no more. I was going to go to rehab. I met Kenneth, and then I met Kenneth the first time I went to rehab. It was a detox. And then after I met him, I was with him for a few years. I had a lot of money. I had my own house. I had my own car. When I met him, I lost it all. I mean, I lost everything. And then I was homeless. From there, I got raped.
How old were you then?
35. I got raped at night. And then the next day, I met some guy. And I got raped for 2 nights in a row. I was out by a river. And I remember him telling me one night, he said, you can stay here if you want, but I got to go. He took my phone. He took my money. He took my pills. He took my dope. He took my weed. He took everything I had on me. He took with him. And I woke up and I couldn't even, my head was so groggy. And I knew that I had to be my own hero. I knew that if I didn't get up and I didn't walk up this big hill and get help, that I was going to sit there and die, lay there and die. And I remember getting up and my brain was so groggy, and I climbed up this hill and it was so hard. When I got on top of that hill, I just went, and I ended up at a store. I walked in, or first I went and held a sign because I knew I needed gas when you get home. And somebody gave me $5, and I went to the store, and I remember going down the aisle, and I started feeling like really sick and weird. And as I was walking, I started throwing up, and as I was walking to the register, I felt like I was going to fall down, fall out. And I went to her, and then my speech, I couldn't talk. I couldn't understand what I was saying.
Do you think he drugged you?
Yes, he drugged me. He did.
How did you meet him?
I met him the next day after getting raped. It was at a motel behind a trash can. I was smoking with some guys, and that guy raped me. I got away from him, and then the next day I met another guy, and he took me to a river where he had a big tent made out of tarp.
And that's where he had you for 2 days?
Yes.
So you were raped 2 separate times?
Yes.
So when was the first time when you were behind the motel?
It was when right on the motel, there's a thing you can go behind where they had the trash cans. I was with a good dude. I met a guy there that wanted me to go with him. He said, "Don't stay here with him." He said, "Bad things will happen to you." And I didn't listen to that guy. And I stayed there with the other guy, and he raped me and left him there, and I didn't know what to do. I walked around. The next day, I met another guy, and he took me to a river where he had a big tent, and he raped us for 2 nights.
2 days and 2 nights he had you there.
Mm-hmm.
And when you woke up, you were all groggy because you're pretty sure you were drugged to even get there.
Yeah.
So if you were explaining this to a girl who might be in a similar situation, what would you tell her so she could maybe avoid this fate herself?
Don't go with guys you don't know. Even if they said they're going to get you high, it ain't worth it. Go home. Go to your mom.
What about people that might be thinking, I can't go home or I can't go to my mom?
Go get help. Go to rehab. I didn't think rehab would be fun. It's so relaxing. Rehab is fun. And once you find yourself and you find out who you are, yoga is the best place to know who you are, and go to rehab and get help, because you'll find out who you are, and you'll find yourself, and you love yourself, and you realize that you are worthy. And being sober is the best thing that's ever happened to me.
That's awesome. What would you say to somebody who's maybe on the fence of thinking about going into rehab, thinking about getting some help, thinking about changing their life? They want to quit. They're sick and tired of being sick and tired. What sort of words of wisdom or encouragement could you give them to make that decision to change their life and overcome addiction?
Think back who you was before you started getting high, and go find that person. I'm still trying to find myself, and one day I'll find myself. So meth, pills, weed, fentanyl, crack, whatever, heroin, whatever you're on, it's not worth losing yourself. And you can find yourself. I'm finding myself. I've been clean for about 18 days now, and I'm almost there, and I'm going to find myself one day. And I hope that you do too, because it's going to be worth it.
When was the last time you were sober this long?
It's been a long time. I've smoked a lot of meth too. A lot. That was my drug of choice, really, was meth.
Tell me about the first time you smoked meth.
It was crank back then. I was about 19, and I loved it. I loved it. It made me stay up all night and party, and then I started seeing things in trees and stuff. I didn't like that part too much.
Hallucinating, you're saying?
Yeah. Well, I was about 20, I think, when I started. Then it turned to ice, and it messed my teeth up. I'm getting dentures, but I want my teeth back, It ain't the same. I'm only 40, and I'm getting dentures, and I'm still waiting on them. So I got to go around looking like not me. I got to go around looking funny.
And that's because of the meth.
And it's because of the meth. I had a wreck also, but that was the meth that tore them up like it was.
So what would you say to somebody who enjoys their smile and likes their teeth, but they want to smoke meth? What would you say to them?
I say stop, or you're not going to have that pretty smile. You know, one day you're going to be walking around with no teeth and teeth that's falling out, and you ain't going to have that same smile.
So you had mentioned earlier that you had smoked weed for the first time when you were 17. Do you think if you had never tried weed that you would have eventually tried smoking meth or speed or trying the prescription pills and the cough syrup?
No, I think weed was the gateway. That was what made me say, hey, I like being high. And someone mentioned, something else, I'm like, oh, I like getting high, I tried pills, and then I tried crank. Then it turned to ice, and I was getting high every day. Every day I was getting high. I was spending all my money on drugs. I didn't have money for myself. I didn't have money to go and buy me an outfit. I didn't have money to get my hair done, to get anything. I was spending all my money I got on drugs.
Do you know people at that time when you started smoking weed that were able to only smoke weed, or did you see people that were continuing to do harder drugs after that?
They were doing harder drugs. Then one day they said, oh, we can't find weed, but we can find crank. So do you want to buy that? I was like, I guess I can try that. So I tried crank, and I loved it. And it ruined my life. It has ruined my life, but it's not too late for me to change my life. There's a future ahead of me.
So you feel then that if you had never had the experience of feeling what it was like to be high off smoking some weed, that maybe you wouldn't have been interested in getting high and feeling what that was like with something else.
Correct.
Is that what you're saying?
Correct.
So marijuana, while it can be used recreationally and there may be some positive side effects to it, your experience is that it led you to harder drugs. Is that correct?
Yes. I like the feeling of being high. And I thought that the other drugs would, be as like getting high to weed, but the other drugs are so much harder. But it was the weed that led me to the other drugs.
That's very interesting. Very interesting. So what was it that was sort of the final straw for you that made you decide that, you know what, I need to go into rehab. I need to do this to have a change for my life so I can overcome addiction? What was that for you?
The place I live now, I live downtown, in the middle of downtown, and it's scary there. And people come up to me and ask me if I want to get high. And I don't want to one day go into someone's house and get raped again. I don't want to put myself through that. I'm worthy, and I know that I'm worthy, and I know I deserve better than what I've been putting myself through, and I want to change.
How did you manage to garner that strength or that courage to be able to realize that I am enough and I am a good person and I do deserve a better life and I want to have the life that I had before and I know I can be doing better?
Because I got kids. I got a daughter that's 18, got a daughter that's 19, and my daughter's smoking weed right now. And I need to be where I'm not high. I want to tell my story. I want my daughter, I want her to know that I quit. And I want to one day share my story so I can get other girls, other people to quit and know that they can do it. It's hard and it's a long road, but you can do it.
Do you think, in hindsight, after all this experience that you've had over the years, are the drugs worth it?
No, they weren't worth it at all.
If you could go back and never smoke weed again, would you do it again?
I would not smoke weed. I wish I could go back because my life would be so much different right now if I wouldn't have smoked weed on that Halloween night.